Hey everyone, how y'all doing? I hope you're all in great health today and full of peace. As always, we're going to dive into a gut wrenching story that is sure to stir your emotions, test your patience, and maybe even get you heated. This is the story of a woman who discovered a hidden phone in her garage, only to uncover a web of lies so twisted, so devastating, that it would shatter everything she believed about the man she married. Picture this. For 12 years, she trusted him completely, raised their two daughters, maintained their home, and never once questioned his loyalty. But what she found on that phone would reveal a double life so shocking, so cruel, that it would change her forever. However, what her husband didn't know was that she wasn't going to be the victim he expected. She had something he could never anticipate, and it would lead him straight to his ruin. Well, before we dig deep into this story, I always ask you to keep supporting this channel. If you haven't yet, make sure you hit the like button. And so you don't miss any of our most exciting and recent narratives, subscribe and activate the notification bell while you wait. How about a quick roll call? I'd love to know where you're watching from. Please write your name, your city, and the word present in the comments below. Thank you all so much. All right, without further ado, let's dive right into the story. That afternoon, the autumn sun cast long shadows across the driveway of their modest two-story house in the suburbs. Inside, the kitchen smelled of fresh coffee and the faint sweetness of cinnamon rolls, bacon in the oven. Everything seemed perfectly normal, perfectly ordinary, perfectly fine. But beneath the surface of this picture-perfect life, something was about to crack wide open, revealing a darkness that had been festering for years. Her name was Maya, a woman of 38, with warm brown eyes that crinkled at the corners when she smiled, hair pulled back in a practical ponytail, and hands that showed the honest wear of caring for a home and raising children. She wore simple jeans and a soft sweater, the uniform of a woman who had long ago stopped dressing to impress anyone but herself. For 12 years, she had been married to Derek, a man she met in college when they were both young and full of dreams. He was handsome back then, with an easy smile and a confidence that drew her in. He promised her the world, promised her a life of partnership and love, promised her that she would never have to worry about anything as long as they were together. They had two daughters, Emma, who was 10, and Sophie, who was 7. Both girls had their father's dark hair and their mother's gentle disposition. Maya's entire world revolved around them, around the school pickups and homework sessions, around the ballet recitals and soccer games, around the thousand small moments that make up a childhood. She had given up her career in graphic design when Emma was born, decisions she and Derek made together, or at least that's what she told herself. He worked as a project manager at a tech consulting firm downtown, a job that required long hours and frequent travel, or so he said. Maya never questioned it. Why would she? She trusted him. She trusted him with every fiber of her being. That particular afternoon, Maya was preparing for Emma's birthday party the following weekend. She needed the folding tables from the garage, the ones they stored away after last summer's barbecue. The garage was Derek's domain, a cluttered space filled with tools, old sports equipment, boxes of forgotten belongings, and the musty smell of concrete and motor oil. She rarely ventured in there, respecting his need for a space that was his own. But today, she had no choice. The tables were somewhere in the back, behind the lawnmower and the stack of paint cans. She pushed open the side door and flipped on the overhead light. The fluorescent bulb flickered before settling into a steady hum. She picked her way carefully through the maze of Derek's possessions, past the workbench cluttered with screwdrivers and wrenches, past the shelf holding old tax documents in labeled boxes, past the bicycle with the flat tire that he kept promising to fix. As she reached for one of the folding tables, leaning against the far wall, her foot caught on something. She stumbled, catching herself against the workbench. Looking down, she saw that she'd kicked over a small cardboard box, one that had been tucked behind a stack of old newspapers. The contents spilled out onto the concrete floor. At first, she thought it was just more junk, more of the endless accumulation of things that people collect over the years and never quite get around to throwing away. But then something caught her eye, a small black object, sleek and rectangular, partially hidden beneath a folded tarp. She bent down and picked it up. It was a phone, not Derek's regular phone, the one he carried everywhere and checked constantly. This was different. Older model, cheap protective case, no distinguishing features. A burner phone, though Maya didn't know to call it that yet. Her heart began to beat a little faster. Why would Derek have a second phone? And why would he hide it in the garage? Her hands trembled slightly as she pressed the power button. Nothing happened. Dead battery. Of course. She stood there in the dim garage, the phone cold and heavy in her palm, her mind racing through possibilities. Maybe it was an old work phone he'd forgotten about. Maybe it was something innocent, something that had a perfectly reasonable explanation. But deep in her gut, in that place where instinct lives, she knew. She knew that this phone was a secret, and secrets in a marriage are never innocent. She slipped the phone into her pocket and continued gathering the tables, moving mechanically, her thoughts a jumbled mess. She needed to charge this phone. She needed to see what was on it, but she also needed to be careful, needed to be smart. If Derek knew she'd found it, if he suspected anything, he might destroy the evidence, might cover his tracks. She had to wait for the right moment, had to find out the truth before confronting him. That evening, Derek came home at his usual time, around 7:30. He walked through the door with his briefcase in one hand and his regular phone in the other, already scrolling through emails. He barely looked up as he kissed Maya on the cheek, a perfunctory gesture that had become routine over the years. His mind was clearly elsewhere, already disengaged from the domestic scene around him. "How was your day?" Maya asked, her voice steady despite the storm raging inside her. "Exhausting," Derek replied, loosening his tie. "Back-to-back meetings all afternoon. I'm going to grab a shower before dinner." He disappeared upstairs without waiting for a response, without asking about her day, without engaging with the girls who were doing homework at the kitchen table. This too had become normal, this absence even when he was present. Maya watched him go, the hidden phone burning like a coal in her pocket. She waited until she heard the shower running upstairs, then slipped into the small home office they kept on the first floor. She closed the door and locked it, her hands shaking as she rummaged through the desk drawer for an old charging cable. She found one that fit, plugged the phone in, and waited. The screen flickered to life after a few moments, showing a low battery indicator. She waited longer, her ears straining for any sound of Derek finishing his shower. 5 minutes passed, 10. Finally, the phone had enough charge to unlock. She tried the obvious combinations: their anniversary, Emma's birthday, Sophie's birthday. Nothing worked. Her frustration mounted. Then, almost as an afterthought, she tried Derek's own birthday. The phone unlocked. What Maya saw on that screen would haunt her for months to come. The home screen was sparse, almost empty. Just a few apps. Messages, photos, a banking app she didn't recognize, email. Her thumb hovered over the Messages app, and with a deep breath she opened it. The first conversation that appeared made her stomach drop. It was with someone saved as J in the contacts. The messages were intimate, affectionate, explicit, terms of endearment that Derek had stopped using with Maya years ago, plans to meet, complaints about having to maintain appearances, references to a future together, once he dealt with his current situation. Maya's vision blurred. She sank into the desk chair, her legs suddenly unable to support her weight. This couldn't be real. This couldn't be happening. She scrolled up through the conversation, months and months of messages, hundreds of them, going back over 2 years. 2 years. For 2 entire years, Derek had been carrying on an affair and she had suspected nothing. The messages painted a picture of a relationship that was far more than physical, far more than a momentary lapse in judgment. This was love, or at least what Derek believed was love. He spoke to this person with a tenderness and attention he no longer showed to Maya, made promises about leaving, about starting fresh, about building a life together. But who was Jay? Maya's hands were shaking so badly now that she could barely hold the phone. She backed out of the messages and opened the Photos app. the screen filled with images that felt like knives plunging into her chest. Derek with a woman she didn't recognize, younger than Maya by at least 10 years, with long dark hair and a confident smile. They were at restaurants Maya had never been to, on trips Derek claimed were for work, in hotel rooms and apartments that were clearly not hotels but someone's home. The intimacy in the photos was undeniable. This wasn't just an affair. This was a whole separate life. Maya scrolled through image after image, each one a fresh wound. There were selfies of the two of them in bed, vacation photos from beaches and cities, pictures of them at concerts and sporting events. In one photo, Derek was kissing the woman's forehead with such tenderness that Maya felt physically sick. That expression on his face, that softness, she remembered when he used to look at her that way. When had he stopped? When had she become invisible to him? Then she found something that made her blood run cold, a photo of legal documents. She zoomed in, her heart pounding so hard she thought it might burst through her chest. It was a consultation agreement with a divorce attorney dated 3 months ago. Derek had already met with a lawyer. He was planning to leave her, planning to dismantle their family, and he hadn't said a word. He was preparing, strategizing, getting his affairs in order before dropping the bomb that would destroy everything. Maya sat in that small office for what felt like hours, but was probably only 20 minutes, scrolling through the evidence of her husband's betrayal. The bank app showed a separate account she'd never known about, one with regular deposits and withdrawals, money being siphoned away from their family finances. The email app contained correspondence with the divorce attorney, discussions of asset protection, questions about custody arrangements, strategies for minimizing what Derek would have to pay in support. He was treating their marriage like a business deal gone bad, calculating his exit with cold precision. A knock on the door made her jump so violently she nearly dropped the phone. "Maya, you in there?" Derek's voice, casual and unsuspecting. "Dinner ready. The girls are hungry." She scrambled to close all the apps, to make the phone look exactly as she'd found it. Her voice came out steadier than she expected. "I'll be right out. Just finishing up some emails." She heard his footsteps retreat toward the kitchen. Moving quickly, she unplugged the phone, turned it off, and slipped it back into her pocket. She splashed cold water on her face from the small bathroom attached to the office, trying to compose herself, trying to push down the scream in anguish that threatened to overwhelm her. In the mirror, she saw a woman she barely recognized. Her eyes were red, her face pale, but underneath the shock, something else was beginning to take shape. Something cold and hard and unbreakable. She couldn't break down. Not now. Not yet. She needed to think, needed to plan. Derek had been preparing for months, maybe longer, to destroy her life. She needed to be equally prepared, equally strategic. She couldn't let him see that she knew. She had to keep playing the role of the oblivious wife while she figured out her next move. The thought of sitting across from him at the dinner table, pretending everything was normal, made her want to scream. But she had no choice. She had her daughters to think about, their futures to protect. Maya took several deep breaths, squared her shoulders, and walked out of the office. In the kitchen, Derek had already started serving the casserole she'd prepared earlier. Emma and Sophie were arguing about whose turn it was to set the table, their voices bright and innocent. Derek looked up when Maya entered, and for just a moment she saw him through new eyes. This man, the father of her children, the person she'd built a life with, was a stranger, a liar, a manipulator who'd been carefully constructing an exit strategy while she cooked his meals and washed his clothes and raised his children. "You okay?" he asked, his brow furrowing slightly. "You look a little pale." The concern in his voice was almost convincing. Almost. Maya forced a smile. "I'm fine, just a headache coming on. Long day." "You should rest after dinner," Derek said, turning back to the food. "I can handle bedtime with the girls tonight." How generous, Maya thought bitterly. How very thoughtful of the man who's planning to abandon us. But out loud, she just said, "Thank you, that would be nice." They ate dinner as a family, the four of them around the kitchen table, and Maya went through the motions like an actress in a play. She asked the girls about school, complimented Sophie's spelling test score, helped Emma with a math problem. She laughed at Derek's joke about something that happened at work, a joke she didn't find funny but responded to anyway, because that's what she always did. The entire time, the phone in her pocket felt like it weighed 1,000 pounds, a secret bomb that could explode and destroy everything around them. After dinner, Derek kept his promise and took the girls upstairs for their bedtime routine. Maya mechanically cleared the table, loaded the dishwasher, wiped down the counters. Her hands moved automatically while her mind raced. What should she do? Confront Derek immediately? No, that would be stupid. He had a plan, had prepared, had already met with a lawyer. If she confronted him now, in her current emotional state, without preparation of her own, she would lose everything. He would control the narrative, would use her reaction against her, would paint her as unstable or irrational. She needed her own lawyer. She needed to understand her rights, her options. She needed to document everything on that phone, needed to save the evidence somewhere Derek couldn't access or destroy. She needed to check their finances, figure out how much money he'd already moved, protect what she could. The betrayal was devastating, crushing, but she couldn't afford to fall apart. Not yet. She had to be smart, had to be strategic, had to protect herself and her daughters. That night, after Derek fell asleep beside her, snoring softly in their bed like nothing was wrong, Maya lay awake staring at the ceiling. The hidden phone was now buried at the bottom of her underwear drawer, charged and ready. Tomorrow, while Derek was at work and the girls were at school, she would take photos of everything. She would document every message, every photo, every email. She would find a lawyer, a good one, and she would start building her own case. Derek wanted a war. He was going to get one. But this time, he wouldn't be fighting against the naive, trusting woman he'd taken advantage of for years. He'd be fighting against someone who finally saw him for exactly what he was. The next morning unfolded with the same mundane routine that had defined Maya's life for over a decade. She woke at 6, started the coffee, packed the girls' lunches, made breakfast, while Derek showered and dressed for work. He came downstairs in one of his pressed work shirts and tailored pants, checking his regular phone constantly, barely acknowledging the plate of eggs and toast Maya set in front of him. Emma and Sophie ate their cereal, chattering about an upcoming school field trip, oblivious to the tension radiating from their mother. Maya smiled and nodded at appropriate moments, but inside she was counting the minutes until they all left. Derek kissed her goodbye at 7:30, the same dry peck on the cheek he'd given her every morning for years. Have a good day, he said automatically, his eyes already distant, already thinking about whatever awaited him at the office, or maybe thinking about her, about Jay, about the secret life he'd been nurturing, while Maya took care of everything here. You too, Maya replied, the words ashes in her mouth. She watched through the window as he backed out of the driveway, waited until his car disappeared around the corner. Then she got the girls ready, drove them to school, hugged them goodbye, reminded them about homework and after-school activities. She sat in the school parking lot for a full 5 minutes after they'd gone inside, gripping the steering wheel so tightly her knuckles turned white. The facade was exhausting, the pretending, the acting like her world hadn't just imploded. But she couldn't stop now. She had work to do. Back home, Maya retrieved the hidden phone from her drawer and set it on the kitchen table alongside her own phone. She opened her laptop and created a new folder, password protected, labeled with an innocuous name. Then, methodically, she began taking screenshots of everything on Derek's secret phone. Every message with Jay, every photo, every email with the divorce attorney, the banking app showing the secret account. It took over an hour to capture it all, and with each screenshot, the full scope of Derek's deception became clearer. The messages with Jay revealed a relationship that had started as an affair, but evolved into something Derek clearly viewed as his real life, with Maya and the girls as the obligation he was stuck with until he could engineer his escape. He complained about Maya constantly in those texts, calling her boring, saying she'd let herself go, claiming she was more like a roommate than a wife. The cruelty of his words cut deeper than the affair itself. This wasn't just betrayal, this was contempt. He'd stopped loving her years ago, maybe never really loved her at all, and had stayed only out of convenience or cowardice or calculation. Jay, whose full name Maya discovered was Jessica Morales, was an account executive at one of Derek's client companies. They'd met at a conference in Seattle 2.5 years ago, and the affair had been ongoing ever since. Jessica was 31, single, ambitious. In her messages, she pressured Derek constantly about leaving Maya, about making their relationship official, about moving in together. She was tired of being the secret, tired of weekend getaways and stolen afternoons. She wanted a real relationship, a public one, and Derek kept promising it was coming, kept saying he just needed to wait for the right time, needed to plan properly so he didn't lose everything in the divorce. The financial records showed Derek had been moving money for at least 6 months. Small amounts at first, easily overlooked, but increasing over time. He'd opened the secret account using his mother's address, routing money there from his bonuses and from their joint savings, a little at a time so Maya wouldn't notice the discrepancy. In total, he'd moved nearly $47,000, money that should have been going toward their daughter's college funds, toward their retirement, toward their life together. Instead, Derek was building his escape fund, stocking his war chest for the divorce he was planning. The emails with the attorney were perhaps the most chilling evidence of all. Derek had consulted with someone named Howard Breslin, a lawyer who specialized in what the website called strategic divorces for high net worth individuals. Never mind that Derek wasn't particularly high net worth, he clearly saw himself that way, or at least wanted to protect what he had. The emails discussed tactics for minimizing alimony, for arguing that Maya's lack of recent employment history proved she'd been voluntarily unemployed and thus wasn't entitled to the same level of support. They discussed custody arrangements that would give Derek time with the girls, but not so much that he'd be inconvenienced. They discussed the value of their home, their retirement accounts, their assets, breaking down Maya's life into line items on a balance sheet. In one particularly damning email, Derek asked the attorney about moving more assets before filing, about whether there were ways to hide income or undervalue his earning potential. The attorney's response was carefully worded, but essentially confirmed that while he couldn't advise anything illegal, there were strategies for asset protection that should be implemented sooner rather than later. This was dated 3 weeks ago. Derek was in the final stages of his plan. He would probably file within a month, maybe two, blindsiding Maya with papers and expecting her to fold, to accept whatever terms he offered because she'd be too shocked and hurt and overwhelmed to fight back. Maya sat back from the laptop, her entire body shaking with rage. How dare he? How dare he plan this, calculate this, treat her like she was nothing more than an obstacle to his happiness? She had given him everything. She'd sacrificed her career, her independence, her own dreams to support his ambitions, to create a home for him, to raise their children. And this was how he repaid her, with lies and betrayal and a calculated dismantling of everything they'd built together. But Derek had made one critical mistake. He'd underestimated her. He assumed she was passive, compliant, that she would accept whatever he decided because that's what she'd always done. He had no idea that she'd found the phone, no idea that she now had copies of everything, no idea that the naive woman he'd been taking advantage of was gone, replaced by someone who would fight back with everything she had. Maya picked up her own phone and began researching divorce attorneys. Not just any attorney, she needed someone good, someone who specialized in cases involving hidden assets and infidelity. Someone who would fight as dirty as Derek's lawyer was clearly prepared to fight. She spent 3 hours reading reviews, visiting websites, making notes. Finally, she found someone who looked perfect. Patricia Moreno, a family law attorney with 23 years of experience and a reputation for being absolutely ruthless in protecting her clients. Her website featured testimonials from women who'd been in situations similar to Maya's, women who'd been blindsided by husbands who thought they could take everything. Maya called the office, her heart pounding. The receptionist was professional and warm, said that Attorney Moreno had a cancellation tomorrow morning at 9. Could Maya make it? Yes, Maya said. She could definitely make it. She hung up and sat in the sudden silence of her empty house, the magnitude of what was happening finally hitting her fully. Her marriage was over. The life she'd known was over. Everything was about to change, and there was no going back. That evening, Derek came home in an unusually good mood. He actually smiled at Maya when he walked in, asked about her day, played with the girls before dinner. Maya watched this performance with detached fascination. Was he like this because he'd spent the afternoon with Jessica, or because his plan was coming together, or was he simply a sociopath who could compartmentalize so completely that he felt no guilt at all? She responded appropriately, smiled when she was supposed to smile, laughed at his jokes, played her role. All the while, she was thinking about tomorrow's meeting, about the evidence sitting in her password protected folder, about the war that was coming. After the girls were in bed, Derek suggested they watch a movie together, something they hadn't done in months. Maya agreed, settling onto the couch beside him, letting him put his arm around her shoulders. The movie played, some action thriller neither of them really cared about, and Maya felt like she was floating outside her body, watching this scene from a distance. This man next to her, this stranger wearing her husband's face, thought he was so clever, thought he had everything under control. He had no idea that tomorrow morning, while he was at the office probably messaging Jessica about their future together, Maya would be sitting across from a lawyer, planning his destruction. The meeting with Patricia Moreno changed everything. The attorney's office was in a sleek downtown building, all glass and steel and marble floors. Patricia herself was a woman in her 50s, impeccably dressed in a navy suit, with sharp eyes that seemed to see right through any pretense. She listened to Maya's story without interrupting, taking notes on a yellow legal pad, her expression neutral but focused. When Maya finished, Patricia set down her pen and looked directly at her. "You did exactly the right thing by not confronting him," Patricia said, her voice firm and reassuring. "Men like your husband, they're planners. They like to control the narrative, but you've taken that control away from him, and he doesn't even know it yet." "What do I do now?" Maya asked, her voice barely above a whisper. "Now, we build our case," Patricia replied. "You have evidence of infidelity, which in this state is absolutely relevant to questions of alimony and asset division. You have evidence of hidden assets and financial manipulation, which could constitute fraud. You have proof that he was planning to ambush you with a divorce while systematically weakening your financial position. All of this paints a very clear picture for a judge." Patricia went through everything methodically. First, Maya needed to start documenting their marital assets, every account, every investment, every piece of property. She needed to get copies of tax returns, bank statements, retirement account statements, anything that showed the true state of their finances. Second, Patricia would file a motion to freeze all accounts as soon as divorce papers were served, preventing Derek from moving any more money. Third, they would use Derek's own correspondence with his attorney against him, showing the court that he'd been acting in bad faith, planning to defraud Maya of her rightful share. "But what about the girls?" Maya asked, her throat tight. "He wants custody, or at least enough custody to reduce child support. The affair matters there too," Patricia explained. "While courts try not to punish parents for their personal choices, they do consider stability and moral fitness. A father who's been carrying on a secret relationship for years, who's been moving marital assets to fund that relationship, who's been planning to upend his children's lives without regard for their well-being, that doesn't look good. We'll fight for primary custody, and we'll win." Over the next 2 hours, Patricia walked Maya through everything that would happen: the filing, the temporary orders, the discovery process where each side demanded financial records from the other, the depositions, the potential trial if Derek refused to settle. It was overwhelming, terrifying, but also empowering. Maya wasn't going to be a victim, she was going to be a fighter. "There's one more thing," Patricia said as the meeting was wrapping up. "You need to be prepared for Derek's reaction when he realizes you know. Men like him, when they lose control, they can become angry, sometimes even dangerous. Do you feel safe in your home?" Maya hadn't even considered this. Did she feel safe? Derek had never been physically violent, but she'd also never challenged him before, never threatened his carefully constructed plans. I don't know, she admitted. I want you to have a safety plan, Patricia said firmly. Important documents, some cash, a bag packed for you and the girls, kept somewhere he won't look. If things escalate, you need to be able to leave quickly. I'm not trying to scare you, but I've seen too many cases where the spouse becomes vindictive when they realize they've been caught. Maya nodded, the reality of the situation settling over her like a heavy blanket. This wasn't just a legal battle. This was her life, her safety, her children's well-being. Everything was at stake. She left Patricia's office 3 hours after arriving, a retainer agreement signed, a plan in place, and a sense of grim determination that surprised her with its strength. She'd spent 12 years being accommodating, being flexible, being whatever Derek needed her to be. That version of Maya was gone. The woman walking out of that building was someone new, someone harder, someone who would do whatever it took to protect herself and her daughters. Over the next 2 weeks, Maya became someone she barely recognized. On the surface, nothing changed. She maintained the same routines, the same pleasant demeanor, the same wifely performance. But underneath, she was gathering evidence with the methodical precision of a detective. She photographed every document she could find, bank statements and investment records and insurance policies. She made copies of Derek's tax returns from the home office, discovered that his income was actually 20% higher than what he'd been telling her, money that went into accounts she'd never known existed. She opened a separate bank account in her own name at a different bank, began moving small amounts of money from their household account, building her own safety fund. She also hired a private investigator, something Patricia had recommended. The investigator, a former police detective named Raymond Chen, would document Derek's affair, get photos and video that could be used as evidence if Derek tried to deny everything. It felt sordid, hiring someone to follow her own husband, but Maya was past the point of sentiment. This was war, and she needed ammunition. Raymond's reports came back within a week, and they were damning. Derek was seeing Jessica 3 times a week, every Tuesday and Thursday, at a condo in the city that Jessica apparently rented, and most Saturday afternoons when he claimed to be playing golf with colleagues. Raymond had photos of them entering the building together, kissing in the parking garage, having dinner at romantic restaurants. He had video of Derek leaving the condo at 10 at night, his shirt untucked, his expression satisfied. The evidence was incontrovertible. But Raymond discovered something else, something Maya hadn't expected. Jessica was also married. She'd been separated from her husband for 8 months, and her divorce was nearly finalized. This added a new layer to the situation. Derek wasn't just having an affair, he was planning to immediately move in with Jessica, to blend right into her life as soon as he was free. They'd been discussing it in their messages, planning which of Jessica's condo furniture they'd keep, talking about taking a trip to Europe once both divorces were done. It was all mapped out, a future that had no room for Maya and the girls, except as occasional inconveniences. Maya also made another discovery during this time, one that made her blood boil even more than the affair. Going through old credit card statements, she found charges for jewelry she'd never received, expensive dinners she'd never attended, hotel rooms in cities Derek had supposedly visited for work, but where he'd actually been with Jessica. He'd been funding his entire affair with their marital assets, spending money that should have gone to their family on his mistress instead. The audacity of it was breathtaking. Throughout all of this, Derek remained oblivious. He continued his routine, his double life, his preparations for leaving. He was getting sloppy too, staying later at the office, or at least claiming to, sometimes not coming home until after the girls were asleep. When Maya asked about it, he was irritable and dismissive. You wouldn't understand the pressure I'm under, he'd snap. I'm trying to provide for this family, and all you do is question me. The irony would have been funny if it wasn't so painful. He was providing for the family by stealing from it, by planning to abandon it, by giving their resources to another woman. But Maya said nothing, just apologized for bothering him, played the part of the chastened wife. Inside, she was counting down the days until Patricia would file the papers, until Derek's whole carefully constructed world would come crashing down around him. The confrontation came on a Tuesday evening in late October, 3 weeks after Maya had found the hidden phone. Patricia had filed the divorce papers that morning, and a process server had delivered them to Derek at his office at 2 in the afternoon. Maya had known this was happening, had prepared for it, but nothing could have really prepared her for Derek's reaction when he came home that night. He burst through the front door at 6, his face purple with rage, the legal documents crumpled in his fist. Maya was in the kitchen helping Sophie with a science project, Emma upstairs in her room doing homework. She looked up calmly as Derek stormed in, his eyes wild. "What the hell is this?" he shouted, throwing the papers on the counter. "What the hell did you do?" Maya took a deep breath, kept her voice steady. "Girls, go upstairs, please. Both of you, now." Sophie looked scared. Emma appeared in the doorway looking worried, but Maya gave them a firm look, and they obeyed, hurrying up the stairs. She waited until she heard Emma's door close before turning back to Derek. Her heart was pounding, but her hands were steady. This was the moment she'd been preparing for. "I filed for divorce," she said simply. "I'm sure you can read." "You filed? You filed," Derek sputtered, his face contorted with disbelief and fury. "You don't get to file. I was going to. I was handling this." "I know you were," Maya replied, her voice cold. "I know all about your plans, Derek. I found your phone, the one you hid in the garage." The color drained from Derek's face. He looked like he'd been punched. What? How long have you?" "Long enough," Maya said. "Long enough to copy everything. Every message with Jessica, every email with your lawyer, every record of the money you've been hiding. All of it." Derek's shock was giving way to calculation. She could see his mind working, trying to figure out how to salvage this, how to regain control. "Maya, listen, we can talk about this. You're overreacting. Yes, I made a mistake, but we can work through this for the girls." "Don't you dare," Maya's voice rose despite her efforts to stay calm. "Don't you dare bring the girls into this. You were planning to leave them, to upend their entire lives so you could play house with your mistress. You don't get to pretend you care about them now." "She's not a mistress," Derek shot back, then seemed to realize what he'd said. "I mean, it's not like that. You don't understand. We haven't been happy for years, Maya. You have to know that. We're just going through the motions." "You haven't been happy," Maya corrected. "I've been raising our children and taking care of our home while you were off living a double life. And you know what the really amazing part is? You were planning to divorce me, to take everything, to leave me with nothing, and you thought I'd just accept it. You thought I was that weak." Derek's expression hardened. "You're not going to win this," he said, his voice low and threatening. "I have the best lawyer in the city. I make all the money in this family. You think a judge is going to give you anything when you haven't worked in 12 years? You're unemployable, Maya. You've let yourself become useless." The words were designed to hurt, to break her down, to make her doubt herself. A month ago, they might have worked, but not anymore. Maya smiled, a cold smile that didn't reach her eyes. "Actually, Derek, my lawyer is better than yours, and we have evidence of your affair, your hidden assets, your plans to defraud me. We have proof you've been using marital funds to support your relationship with Jessica. The court is going to take a very dim view of all of that." "You're bluffing," Derek said, but there was uncertainty in his voice now. "Am I?" Maya pulled her phone from her pocket, pulled up one of the many screenshots she'd saved. She held it up so Derek could see. It was a message from him to Jessica, explicitly detailing their plans for after the divorce, including a comment about how Maya would be too stupid to fight for anything substantial. Derek's face went pale again. "I have hundreds of these," Maya continued. "Photos, messages, emails, financial records. Your lawyer is good, but he can't make this evidence disappear. You're going to lose, Derek. You're going to lose big. And you're going to have to explain to Emma and Sophie why you destroyed their family." Derek lunged forward suddenly, reaching for Maya's phone. She stepped back quickly, and he stumbled into the counter. "Give me that," he demanded. "No," Maya said firmly. And if you touch me, if you threaten me, I will call the police and you'll have an assault charge to deal with on top of everything else. Is that really how you want this to go?" They stood there in the kitchen, facing each other like enemies, which Maya supposed they were now. The man she'd loved, the father of her children, was looking at her with such hatred that it took her breath away. But underneath his anger, she could see fear. He was realizing that he'd underestimated her, that she wasn't going to roll over, that this was going to be a real fight. Good. Let him be afraid. Let him feel a fraction of what she'd felt when she discovered his betrayal. "I want you out of this house," Maya said quietly. "Tonight, pack a bag and leave. You can stay with Jessica since you two are so devoted to each other." "This is my house too," Derek protested. "You can't kick me out." "Actually, I can," Maya replied. "My lawyer filed for exclusive possession as part of the divorce filing. A judge will review it tomorrow, but given the evidence of your affair and financial manipulation, I'm confident it will be granted. You can leave now voluntarily, or you can wait for the sheriff to escort you out. Your choice." Derek stared at her for a long moment, and Maya could see him weighing his options, trying to figure out if she was serious. She held his gaze, refusing to back down. Finally, he looked away. "Fine," he spat. "I'll pack a bag. But this isn't over, Maya, not by a long shot. I'm going to make you regret this." "I already regret plenty," Maya said softly. "I regret trusting you. I regret wasting 12 years on someone who never really loved me. But I don't regret fighting back. And I won't regret winning." Derek turned and stormed upstairs. Maya could hear him moving around in their bedroom, opening drawers, slamming closet doors. She stayed in the kitchen, her whole body trembling with adrenaline. Emma appeared at the top of the stairs, her face tear-stained. "Mom, what's happening? Is Dad leaving?" Maya's heart broke. This was what she'd been dreading most, having to explain this to her daughters, having to shatter their sense of security. But there was no avoiding it now. "Come down here, sweetheart," she said gently. "Let's talk." Emma came down slowly, followed by Sophie, who'd emerged from her room. Maya gathered them both close, held them tight. "Your dad and I are getting divorced," she said, her voice thick with emotion. "It's not your fault, and both of us still love you very much. But we can't be married anymore." "Because of Dad's girlfriend?" Emma asked, and Maya's stomach dropped. "I heard you fighting. He has a girlfriend, doesn't he?" Maya closed her eyes. She'd hoped to shield them from the ugly details, at least for a while. But Emma was smart, observant. Of course she'd picked up on things. "Yes," Maya admitted. "Your father has been seeing someone else. That's part of why we're getting divorced." Sophie started crying, burying her face in Maya's shoulder. Emma just looked angry, her jaw set in a way that reminded Maya painfully of Derek. "I hate him," Emma said fiercely. "Don't say that," Maya said, though the words felt hollow. "He's still your father. He made mistakes, adult mistakes, but he loves you." "If he loved us, he wouldn't have done this," Emma replied, and Maya had no answer to that, because Emma was absolutely right. Derek came back downstairs with a large duffel bag, his expression closed off. He looked at the three of them huddled together on the couch, and something flickered across his face. Might have been regret, or maybe just annoyance at the inconvenience of it all. "Girls, I'll see you soon," he said. "This is just temporary." "No, it's not," Emma said coldly. "You ruined everything." Derek flinched but didn't respond. He looked at Maya one last time, opened his mouth as if to say something, then seemed to think better of it. He walked out the front door, and Maya heard his car start, heard him drive away. Just like that, 12 years of marriage ended with a slammed door and an engine fading into the distance. Maya held her daughters and let them cry, let herself cry, too, all the tears she'd been holding back for weeks finally breaking free. They sat there together for a long time, the three of them, until the tears were exhausted and all that remained was a strange, hollow quiet. "We're going to be okay," Maya told them, hoping it was true. "I promise you, we're going to get through this." That night, after she'd finally gotten the girls to sleep, Maya sat alone in the dark living room and let herself feel everything she'd been suppressing. The pain, the betrayal, the rage, the fear. It crashed over her in waves, threatening to drown her. But underneath all of it, there was something else. a core of strength she hadn't known she possessed. Derek had tried to destroy her, had planned it meticulously, but she'd caught him first. She'd fought back, and she was going to win. The divorce proceedings that followed were brutal, exactly as Patricia had warned they would be. Derek hired an even more expensive attorney after Howard Breslin told him the case was unwinnable given the evidence. The new lawyer, a woman named Sandra Voss, who had a reputation as a legal barracuda, tried every tactic in the book to discredit Maya and minimize Derek's liability. She argued that the affair was irrelevant, that people grew apart, that Derek deserved credit for being the primary earner. She demanded extensive financial discovery from Maya, trying to prove she'd been hiding assets too. She filed motion after motion, dragging the process out, hoping to exhaust Maya's resources and will to fight. But Patricia was every bit as ruthless, and they had the evidence on their side. Every time Sandra tried a new tactic, Patricia shut it down with documentation. She presented the court with a comprehensive accounting of Derek's hidden money, showed the credit card statements for his affair, brought in Raymond Chen's photos and testimony. She demonstrated that Derek had been systematically defrauding Maya while planning his exit, that he'd violated his fiduciary duty to his spouse, that his actions constituted financial abuse. The deposition process was particularly ugly. Maya had to sit across from Derek and his lawyer and answer hours of questions designed to make her look bad. They asked about her employment history, implying she was lazy. They asked about her parenting, looking for any crack to exploit. They asked about her relationship with Derek, trying to get her to admit they'd been unhappy for years, that the divorce was mutual. Maya answered every question carefully, truthfully, refusing to take the bait. She talked about how she'd given up her career at Derek's request, how she'd managed their household while he focused on work, how she'd believed they were partners until she discovered his betrayal. Derek's deposition was even more revealing. Under oath, confronted with his own messages and emails, he couldn't maintain his denials. He admitted to the affair, claimed it started because he was lonely, because Maya had become distant. He admitted to moving money, but claimed it was for legitimate reasons, though he couldn't really explain what those reasons were. He admitted he'd consulted a divorce attorney, but said he was just exploring options. Patricia picked apart every excuse, every rationalization, until Derek was visibly sweating and his lawyer was calling for breaks every 30 minutes. The custody evaluation was the hardest part for Maya. A court-appointed psychologist spent weeks interviewing everyone, her, Derek, the girls, even some of their friends and family. Maya was terrified that Emma and Sophie would be turned against her somehow, that Derek would manipulate them, or that the evaluator would believe his claims about Maya being an unfit mother. But the girls were honest about what they wanted. They wanted to live primarily with their mother. They were angry at their father for what he'd done, for lying to them and to Maya, for breaking up their family. The evaluator's report recommended primary custody to Maya, with Derek getting every other weekend and one evening per week. It was a devastating blow to Derek, who'd counted on getting equal custody to reduce his child support obligations. As the months dragged on, Maya watched Derek's life fall apart in ways that would have been satisfying if they weren't so sad. His relationship with Jessica didn't survive the harsh light of reality. Once the affair was public, once Derek was actually available, the romance apparently lost its appeal. Jessica's ex-husband used Derek as evidence in their divorce, painting her as an adulterer and using it to negotiate a better settlement. Jessica blamed Derek for ruining her life, and they broke up 3 months after Derek moved out. Derek ended up in a depressing studio apartment, alone, his reputation in tatters. His job was affected too. The company he worked for had a morality clause in their employment contracts, and while they didn't fire him outright, he was passed over for a promotion he'd been promised and quietly moved to a less visible role. His colleagues knew about the affair, the divorce, the hidden money. He became someone people whispered about, someone whose judgment was questioned. Maya, meanwhile, was rebuilding. It wasn't easy. There were nights she cried herself to sleep, days when the anger and hurt threatened to overwhelm her. But she was also discovering who she was outside of being Derek's wife. She enrolled in online courses to update her graphic design skills, started freelancing, slowly building a portfolio and a client base. She focused on her daughters, on creating a stable, loving home for them. She went to therapy to process the trauma of the betrayal and to learn how to trust again, how to see her own worth. The financial settlement, when it finally came, was more than fair. Derek was ordered to pay substantial alimony for 10 years, enough for Maya to support herself while she rebuilt her career. He had to pay child support based on his actual income, not the reduced amount he'd tried to claim. The hidden money was divided equally, and Derek was penalized for his bad faith actions by having to pay Maya's legal fees. The house went to Maya, with Derek's equity being counted as part of his share of the assets. He also had to replenish the girls' college funds that he'd raided to fund his affair. The final hearing was on a gray February morning, almost a year after Maya had found the hidden phone. She sat in the courtroom with Patricia beside her, Derek and Sandra across the aisle. The judge reviewed all the evidence, all the testimony, all the expert reports. Then she delivered her ruling, a comprehensive decision that validated everything Maya had been through and held Derek accountable for his actions. The judge's words were carefully chosen but scathing, talking about the importance of honesty and good faith in marriage, about the harm caused by deception and financial manipulation, about the need to protect vulnerable spouses from predatory behavior. When it was over, when the judge's gavel struck and the marriage was officially dissolved, Maya felt a strange mix of emotions. Relief, certainly. Satisfaction that justice had been done, but also sadness for what she'd lost, for the future she'd thought she was building, for the man she'd believed Derek was, but who'd never really existed. She walked out of that courtroom a different person than she'd been when this started, harder in some ways, but also stronger, more sure of herself, more aware of her own worth. Today, 3 years after finding that hidden phone in the garage, Maya's life looks completely different. She runs her own successful graphic design business from home with a roster of steady clients and enough income to support herself and contribute to the girls' needs beyond what Derek provides. Emma is 13 now, Sophie is 10, both thriving despite the disruption of the divorce. They have a good relationship with their father, who's made efforts to repair the damage, though it will never be what it was. He's dating someone new, someone age appropriate this time, and seems genuinely trying to be a better person, though Maya doesn't particularly care either way. He's no longer her problem. Maya herself has started dating again, cautiously, carefully, with clear boundaries and realistic expectations. She's learned to recognize red flags, to trust her instincts, to value honesty above all else. She'll never again ignore her gut feeling that something's wrong, never again sacrifice her own needs completely for someone else's comfort. The experience with Derek taught her that sometimes the people we trust most are capable of the deepest betrayals, but it also taught her that she's stronger than she ever imagined, that she can survive and rebuild and thrive, even when her world falls apart. Looking back on that afternoon when she stumbled over a cardboard box in the garage and found a phone that would change everything, Maya sometimes wonders what would have happened if she hadn't found it. Would Derek have gone through with his plan? Would she have been blindsided by divorce papers, scrambling to protect herself without preparation, without evidence? Or would she have discovered the truth some other way eventually? She'll never know. What she does know is that finding that phone, as painful as it was, gave her the chance to take control of her own fate, to fight back instead of being a passive victim. She kept the phone, actually. It sits in a drawer in her home office, a reminder of how close she came to losing everything and how she refused to let that happen. Sometimes, when she's feeling discouraged or overwhelmed, she takes it out and remembers who she was when she found it, trembling and devastated and terrified, and who she became in the months that followed, fierce and strategic and unstoppable. That phone represents the end of one life and the beginning of another, the death of naive trust and the birth of hard-won wisdom. The moral of Maya's story isn't complicated. It's about the danger of becoming too comfortable in relationships, too trusting, too willing to ignore signs that something's wrong. It's about the importance of maintaining your own identity and financial independence, even within a marriage. It's about the reality that people can change, or maybe that people can hide who they really are for years before their true nature emerges. But more than anything, it's about strength and resilience, about discovering that you're capable of more than you ever imagined when circumstances demand it. Maya thought she was weak, thought she needed Derek, thought she couldn't survive without him. She was wrong about all of it. She was strong all along. She just needed the right catalyst to discover that strength. Derek, wherever he is in his own journey of regret and reconstruction, learned an expensive lesson about the consequences of betrayal, about how schemes and secrets eventually come to light, about how the person you underestimate might turn out to be your most formidable opponent. He thought he was so clever, hiding his affair and his money, planning his strategic exit. But he forgot one crucial thing. The woman he was trying to destroy was the mother of his children, and mothers will do anything, absolutely anything, to protect what matters most to them. He thought she was weak. He learned the hard way just how wrong he was. For anyone reading this story and seeing yourself in Maya's situation, anyone who's found evidence of betrayal or who suspects their partner is living a double life, the message is clear. Don't confront without preparing. Don't hope it will get better. Don't believe promises to change from someone who's been systematically deceiving you. Instead, gather evidence, protect yourself financially, find a good attorney, and build your case before making any moves. The element of surprise is your greatest weapon. Use it wisely. And remember that the pain of betrayal, as crushing as it is temporary. What's permanent is the strength you discover in yourself when you refuse to be a victim, when you fight back, when you take control of your own destiny. Maya's daughters are learning these lessons too, watching their mother rebuild and thrive. They're learning that women don't need men to complete them, that independence and self sufficiency are valuable, that sometimes the bravest thing you can do is walk away from something that's hurting you. They're learning to recognize their own worth, to demand honesty and respect in relationships, to never settle for less than they deserve. These are lessons that will serve them well throughout their lives, hard-won wisdom earned through their family's painful experience. The hidden phone in the garage was meant to be Derek's secret escape route, his careful documentation of the alternate life he was building. Instead, it became the instrument of his downfall and Maya's salvation. Sometimes the universe has a sense of irony, a way of turning people's weapons against them. Derek tried to destroy Maya, and instead, he destroyed himself. His betrayal, his greed, his arrogance, all of it came back to haunt him in ways he never anticipated. That's the thing about karma, about justice, about the way life has of balancing the scales. You can scheme and plan and manipulate, but eventually the truth comes out. Eventually, you pay for what you've done. So, did you like the story, and which city are you listening from? Let's meet in the comments. If you like the story, you can support me by sending a super thanks so I can keep bringing more stories like this. Thank you so much for your sweet support. I'm looking forward to your comments on the story. On the screen, you can see two new live stories that I highly recommend. There's so much more on my channel. Don't forget to subscribe. See you in the next live story with love and respect.